The stars always looked the same to Auric even after the war began, cold, endless, and quiet. But tonight, as he stood on the deck of the dauntless Horizon, humanity's last surviving starship, the stars looked almost like ghosts, silent witnesses to everything that had been lost. He rested his hand on the glass of the observation window. Beyond it, Earth was nothing but a burned shadow. The home they had loved, the home he had promised to protect, gone. The war with the Threxians had lasted 12 years, and humanity had lost everything except hope. And her. Her name was Lyra, a scientist who once believed she could save the world with her mind. Auric had met her years ago, before the war had taken the skies. She was gentle but fearless, always believing that humans were more than their mistakes. When the first colonies fell, she had joined the evacuation project, and when the dauntless Horizon launched, she was there, leading the last group of survivors. Now, only 2,000 humans remained alive, scattered across the vastness of space. Auric closed his eyes, remembering her voice. "You'll come back to me no matter what," she had said, her hand in his as the alarms wailed across the launch bay. "Promise me, Auric, even if forever feels impossible." He had promised, and he never broke promises. The command bridge was silent except for the soft hum of engines. Captain Juno stood near the navigation console, her face lined with exhaustion. "Scout reports came in, Commander," she said as Auric approached. "The Threxians are tracking us again. They're using gravity nets to slow us down." Auric frowned. "Then we need to jump before they trap us." "We can't," Juno replied. "The hyperdrive's unstable. Dr. Lyra is still trying to fix it." The name made Auric's heart tighten. He nodded once and turned toward the lift. "Then I'll help her." The engineering bay was a maze of flickering lights and exposed circuits. Smoke drifted from overheated panels. In the center, Lyra was crouched beside a glowing core, her hair tied back, her face smudged with grease. Even like that, tired, messy, and covered in ash, she looked like hope itself. "You shouldn't be here," she said without looking up. "The drive's unstable." "Neither should you," he replied, kneeling beside her. "But I see you're not listening to orders either." She smiled faintly. "Someone has to keep this ship alive. You soldiers only know how to break things." Auric chuckled softly. "I can fix things too." "Really?" she teased. "Like broken promises?" He looked at her, the faint blue glow from the core reflecting in his eyes. That one's still unbroken. For a moment, silence hung between them. Not cold or empty, but full of unspoken memories. The war had taken everything from them, yet somehow they still found pieces of life in small moments like this. Lyra adjusted a tool and sighed. "The hyperdrive's fusion loop is cracked. If we try to jump now, we could disintegrate." Auric studied the damage. "Can it be repaired?" "Maybe," she said. "But we need iridium crystals to stabilize the core. The storage vault was destroyed during the last attack. So we need to find more," Auric said. "There's one place," she whispered. "The ruins of Titan Outpost 7, but it's in Threxian territory." Auric didn't hesitate. "Then I'll go." Her eyes widened. "Auric, that's suicide." He smiled. "You said it yourself. Someone has to keep this ship alive." A few hours later, Auric stood in the hangar bay, armored and ready. The shuttle engines hummed behind him. Lyra walked toward him, holding a small metallic pendant. It was shaped like an infinity loop, the kind couples used to wear back on Earth to symbolize forever. "Take it," she said softly. "So you remember what you're fighting for." He took it and fastened it to his armor. "I don't need a reminder," he said, "but I'll keep it safe for you." She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "Auric, if you don't come back..." He gently pressed a finger to her lips. "I promised you forever, Lyra. And I keep my promises." The shuttle bay doors opened, and a flood of starlight filled the hangar. Auric stepped inside the small craft, his figure silhouetted against the bright glow of space. As the shuttle launched, Lyra stood there watching, her heart caught between fear and faith. The journey to Titan Outpost 7 was short but dangerous. Threxian patrols roamed the nearby sectors, and the silence of space was broken only by the static of long-dead beacons. Titan had once been a mining station. Now it was a graveyard of metal and ghosts. As Oryx's shuttle descended, he saw the ruins scattered across the frozen surface. Towers lay broken, half buried in ice. He landed near a collapsed hangar and armed his plasma rifle. Inside the ruins, shadows stretched across the corridors. His helmet lights flickered as he moved deeper into the base. Dust floated in the thin air, glittering like ash. Every step echoed, a reminder that he was utterly alone. He reached the vault chamber, its massive doors half open. The inside glowed faintly. The crystals were still there, shining softly beneath layers of frost. Arik approached and knelt, carefully retrieving the iridium cores. "Got them," he whispered into his comm. "Tell Lyra I'll be home soon." But before he could stand, his sensors blared. A cold, guttural sound filled the air. A Threxian scout unit, tall and insect-like, crawled through the ceiling vent. Its black armor gleamed under his lights. Arik raised his weapon. "I don't have time for this." The creature screeched and lunged. He fired. A blast of blue energy hit its chest, sending it crashing into the wall. But two more appeared behind it, hissing and circling him. He fought with everything he had. Plasma shots lit the dark corridor like lightning. He moved fast, every motion fueled by one thought. "I promised her I'd come back." One creature leapt at him, claws outstretched. Arik rolled aside, slamming his blade through its abdomen. Sparks and green blood sprayed across the floor. The last Threxian shrieked and charged. Arik fired point blank. The creature fell, motionless. Breathing hard, he grabbed the crystals and stumbled toward the exit. His armor was scorched, his oxygen low, but he didn't stop. He had a promise to keep. When the dauntless horizon detected his shuttle returning, the crew rushed to the hangar. The doors opened, revealing Arik, wounded, exhausted, but alive. In his hands, he held the glowing crystals. Lyra ran to him, tears of relief shining in her eyes. "You're insane," she whispered, half laughing, half crying. "Maybe," he said, handing her the crystals, "but I told you I'd come back." She threw her arms around him, and for a brief moment, it felt like the war couldn't touch them. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, but inside the ship, something like warmth flickered again. As Arik looked out the window, he whispered under his breath, "Forever isn't impossible, Lyra. Not if humanity refuses to give up." The dauntless horizon drifted in the quiet darkness of space, far from any sun. Its engines were silent, running on emergency power while the engineering team worked day and night. The air was cold, the lights dim, but there was still hope. Arik had returned alive from Titan Outpost 7, carrying the iridium crystals that could repair the hyperdrive. Humanity had one more chance to escape the Threxian hunters closing in from every direction. In the ship's medical bay, Arik sat on the edge of a narrow bed. His armor was gone, replaced by bandages and medical tape. His shoulder burned from a deep wound, but he didn't care. His eyes kept drifting toward the door, waiting for her. When Lyra finally entered, she carried not a data pad or tools, but a small cup of soup. "Doctor's orders," she said softly. "You need strength before you start trying to save the galaxy again." He smiled weakly. "You fixed the drive yet?" "Almost," she said, sitting beside him. "Your crystals worked. I think we can jump in 6 hours." Arik leaned back, exhaling. 6 hours? That's all the time we need to get lucky." Lyra shook her head. "Luck won't save us this time. We have to make our own luck." There was silence between them, heavy and quiet. Outside, the stars shimmered faintly through the window. For a brief moment, they could almost forget there was a war out there. In the command bridge, Captain Juno stared at the tactical map. Dozens of red marks blinked at the edge of the holographic display. The Threxian fleet. They were hunting the dauntless horizon, their scanners sweeping through nearby systems. "Report," she ordered. Lieutenant Rene replied, "Enemy ships are closing in. Estimated contact in 5 hours, 40 minutes. Juno's expression hardened. "Then we jump in 5. "Yes, ma'am." The captain turned toward the viewport, her reflection cold and steady. Humanity had run from world to world, losing billions, but this ship, this single spark, carried everything they had left. If it fell, humanity would vanish like dust in the dark. In the lower decks, engineers worked frantically around the hyperdrive. Sparks flew as cables were reattached, circuits replaced, and panels welded shut. Lyra stood in the center, directing them with calm focus. "Power flow at 82%, one of the techs shouted. "Good," Lyra said. "Reroute the coolant to the secondary line. We can't afford another overload." Her fingers moved quickly over the console. Numbers flashed across the screen. Pressure levels, fusion temperatures, energy stability. Every line mattered. Every decimal could decide if they lived or died. Auric appeared beside her, his uniform slightly torn but his stance steady. "You shouldn't be here," she said, not looking up. "Neither should you," he replied. "But I see you're still ignoring that," she smirked faintly. "Some things never change." He leaned beside her, watching the core pulse faintly. "You ever think about what happens after this?" She paused. "After what?" "After we survive," she turned toward him. "You really think we will?" "I promised you forever," he said quietly. "So yes." "I do." For a second her eyes softened. But then the console beeped, interrupting the moment. Her expression turned sharp again. "Power spike. Core's rising too fast." Auric rushed to the manual controls and began turning the stabilizer dial. "Pressure valve stuck," he said. "If this keeps up, we'll lose containment." "I've got it," Lyra said, grabbing a thermal wrench. She reached into the open panel, sparks flashing around her arm. The heat was unbearable, but she didn't stop. "Lyra, stop. You'll burn your hand." She shook her head. "I can handle it." Auric took a step closer, ready to pull her away, but then, click. The power surge stopped. The core's glow steadied. The reading stabilized. She exhaled shakily. "It's done." Auric stared at her for a moment, then smiled softly. "You're impossible," she smiled back. "That makes two of us." Hours passed like seconds. The crew prepared for the final jump. Every corridor echoed with quiet footsteps and hushed voices. The lights flickered, systems powered up, and the engines began to hum again, alive for the first time in weeks. But the Threxians were already closing in. On the radar screen, red dots multiplied. Dozens of enemy ships surrounded the sector. They had found the dauntless horizon at last. "Enemy fleet in visual range," shouted Lieutenant Rainey. Captain Juno's voice was calm but firm. "All power to shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The ship shuddered as explosions rippled across the void. Blue shields flickered under the assault. The crew held their breath as shockwaves rolled through the decks. Lyra's voice came through the comm. "Hyperdrive is at full charge. We're ready to jump." "Coordinates set?" Juno asked. "Destination Proxima Haven," Lyra replied. "It's uncharted, but it's safe." "Do it," the captain ordered. But before Lyra could initiate the jump, an explosion tore through the lower decks. The floor shook violently. Warning alarms filled the air. "Damage report," Juno shouted. Rainey's eyes widened. "Hit to the engine section. We've lost power coupling on deck 9. "The jump system is down." Lyra's voice came again, strained. "I'm on it. Just hold them off." Auric raced through the burning corridors toward deck 9. Smoke filled the air and broken pipes spewed steam. The lights flickered red. He could hear the ship creaking under pressure. When he reached the damaged area, he saw fire roaring from the main conduit. The floor was cracked open and sparks rained like falling stars. "Lyra," he called. "I'm here," she shouted back. She was kneeling near the power core, her hands blackened with soot. The heat was overwhelming, but she was still working. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," Auric said, crouching beside her. "I wasn't planning to," she replied with a faint smile. Together they began repairing the broken lines. The ship trembled again as another blast hit the outer hull. The sound of metal tearing echoed through the deck. "Shields failing," came the captain's voice through the comm. "Lyra, we need that jump now." "We're almost there," Lyra shouted. Auric tightened the last connector, but the power flow didn't stabilize. "It's not enough," he said. "We need to reroute manually and from the exterior grid." "That's outside the ship," she said quickly. "The radiation levels." He looked at her, calm but determined. "I'll do it." "Auric, no. You'll die." "I promised you forever," he said again, smiling faintly. "And forever starts with this." Before she could stop him, he grabbed a pressure suit and climbed into the airlock. Through the small window, Lyra watched him walk into the cold void of space, tethered only by a cable. The stars around him looked endless, beautiful and cruel. He reached the outer grid and began reconnecting the power lines manually. Every spark sent waves of pain through his suit's insulation. The radiation meter screamed warnings, but he ignored them. Inside the ship, Lyra monitored his vitals, her hands shaking. "Auric, your pulse is dropping. Come back now." He didn't answer. Instead, his voice came softly through the radio. "Lyra, listen to me. If I don't make it, don't say that. You keep fighting. You keep them alive. You make forever real." Tears rolled down her face. "Auric, please." There was silence, then a loud hum. The power grid flared bright. Energy surged through the ship. The hyperdrive roared to life. "Power restored," Lyra shouted through tears. "We can jump." "Do it," Juno commanded. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the dauntless horizon leapt into hyperspace, vanishing from the Threxian fleet in a burst of energy. Inside the engineering bay, Lyra fell to her knees, breathing hard. The light steadied. The engines purred softly. The ship was safe. But when she looked at the monitor showing Auric's suit, there was nothing. His signal had vanished. Her hand trembled as she touched the glass. "You promised me forever," she whispered. "Don't you dare break it now." Outside, the stars shimmered silently, as if holding their breath. Somewhere in that infinite darkness, a faint transmission flickered through static. "This is Commander Auric Vale," the voice whispered. "Forever's not over yet," the signal cut out. The dauntless horizon floated in the empty glow of hyperspace, stars stretching into endless streaks of light. The jump had been successful, but the crew was shaken. Alarms still rang faintly, the ship's system struggling to stabilize after the Threxian assault. Lyra stood on the command bridge, staring at the navigation console. Every blinking dot reminded her of how close they had come to losing everything. Auric's absence weighed heavily on her. His signal had disappeared after the jump, leaving nothing but silence and a faint memory of his voice. Captain Juno approached, her expression steady but grave. "Lyra, we've escaped for now. But we can't stay here. The Threxians will track us eventually. We need a plan." Lyra took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the pendant around her neck, the infinity loop Auric had worn. "We find a new home, somewhere humanity can survive, and we find Auric. Somehow." Meanwhile, far from the ship, Auric drifted in the cold darkness of space. His suit's tethers had snapped during the jump, leaving him untethered. His body was battered, his oxygen running low, but he refused to panic. "This isn't the end," he whispered to himself. "I promised Lyra forever. Forever isn't over." He activated his suit's emergency thrusters, propelling himself toward the last known trajectory of the dauntless horizon. Every movement was calculated, precise. The void offered no mercy, but Auric had survived worse. Hours passed. His eyes scanned the black emptiness for any sign of the ship. And then, faintly, a glimmer of light appeared, the faint shimmer of the dauntless horizon's engine stabilizing. "Hold on," he whispered. "I'm coming home." Back on the ship, Lyra paced the command bridge. "He survived," she murmured. "He has to." Juno placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll track him. But first, we need to ensure humanity survives. The Threxians are relentless. We can't rely on luck anymore." Lyra nodded, turning to the navigation panel. "There's a planet in the Elysium cluster, uninhabited with breathable atmosphere and fresh water. If we can reach it, humanity can start again." Lieutenant Rainey's voice cut in. "The Threxians patrol near that cluster. We'd have to go through their blockade." "We don't have a choice," Lyra said firmly. "We fight. We survive." That's what Auric would do. Auric managed to reach the ship's outer hull. Using the last of his suit's thrusters, he clung to the metallic surface, pulling himself along with sheer determination. His body ached, every joint screaming, but the thought of Lyra kept him moving. Inside the ship, sensors finally detected the faint heat signature on the hull. "Captain, life form on the exterior." Juno's voice came through the comm. "Seal the airlock and bring him in." Lyra rushed to the airlock, her heart racing. She coordinated with the engineering team, opening the hatch. When Auric was pulled inside, he collapsed, exhausted but alive. She ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "I knew you'd come back." she whispered, holding him tightly. He smiled faintly, resting his head against her shoulder. I promised, he said simply. Forever starts with this moment. The reunion sparked new energy across the ship. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the hyperdrive fully, armed systems, and map a safe path to the Elysium cluster. Humanity's last hope rested in their hands. But for the first time in years, there was hope. A fragile, shining hope that refused to be extinguished. Lyra and Auric stood together in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The universe was vast, cold, and indifferent, but they had each other, and they had humanity. The Threxians will keep coming, Auric said quietly, but we'll keep surviving. Together. Lyra smiled, her fingers entwined with his. Forever isn't impossible, is it? No, he replied. Not if we refuse to give up. The journey to Elysium cluster was perilous. Threxian ships patrolled the outer systems, forcing the dauntless Horizon to use stealth tactics and clever maneuvers. Every jump was calculated, every approach risky. During one tense encounter, the ship's shields barely held against a barrage of plasma strikes. Auric led a countermeasure, using makeshift decoys and energy pulses to mislead the enemy. Lyra coordinated repairs and navigation simultaneously. Every crew member contributed, every skill mattered. It was humanity at its best, clever, resilient, and unbroken. After days of travel and near misses, the dauntless Horizon finally entered orbit around a lush, blue and green world, Elysium. Water sparkled like jewels and the air could support life. Small forests and mountains dotted the landscape. Lyra gasped. We made it. Captain Juno nodded, her expression proud. Humanity survives. But this is just the beginning. We build, we grow, and we prepare, one step at a time. Auric squeezed Lyra's hand. We promised forever, and this is it. Not just us, humanity too. Together they looked down at the planet, imagining a new colony, new generations, and new dreams. Humanity's resilience had carried them here, across the void, through impossible odds. And as the sun rose over Elysium, golden and bright, Lyra whispered softly, Forever isn't impossible. Not when we fight for it. Auric smiled, pressing the infinity pendant against his chest. Forever is real, and we're living it. Months passed, and the first human colony on Elysium began to take shape. Domes rose above the forests, fields were planted, and children's laughter echoed for the first time in years. Lyra led the scientific teams studying the planet, while Auric trained a new generation in survival and defense. Even in the quiet moments, they would stand together, hand in hand, staring at the stars. Every time they did, it reminded them of the journey, of loss, struggle, and unbroken promises. One evening, under a sky full of unfamiliar constellations, Lyra turned to Auric. Do you remember Titan Outpost 7? He nodded. I remember thinking I'd never see you again. And yet here we are, she said, smiling. Auric pulled her close. I promised you forever. Nothing, not the void, not war, not death itself, could stop me. Lyra rested her head against his chest. I know, she whispered. And that's why humanity survived. Because we didn't give up. Because we believed in forever. The stars above glimmered silently, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the universe, hope could shine. Humanity had faced impossible odds, and won. And together Auric and Lyra proved that some promises, no matter how impossible they seem, could truly last forever.